is truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live from New York City. Status Quo in the house. It is Tuesday, October 29th. Let me just retweet this on Periscope. So we're moving and grooving everywhere. Wonderful, wonderful day. Been up since early hours. We were live this morning in New York City from a protest. Really awesome protest, actually. Sometimes you see on these event pages on Facebook and other places, like, 80 people RSVP'd and then 20 people show up. But sometimes you see 80 to 100 people RSVP'd and like 200 show up. That was the case this morning. And for those of you that woke up with us, I thought it was an awesome protest. I'm going to go through some of that a little bit later. We have some footage. If you missed it, it was a little bit early. It was at about 8:15 in the morning, East Coast time, 5:15 a.m. Pacific time. I'm sure YouTube did not make you aware that we were live, but it was really, really cool. Great energy. For those of you that don't know, BlackRock is the largest investor in fossil fuel projects and companies around the world. BlackRock is one of the major Wall Street investment firms. They are also the largest investor in deforestation. So, major protests here in New York City this morning, and we will show you some of that a little bit later. This is my last broadcast of the week. Tomorrow, I'm headed down to Mexico, for my brother's bachelor party. So I will not be live for the rest of the week. I'll be down there celebrating. But Joseph, our video director, who was with me this morning and did a good job, he'll be live. So you'll get a little different face than me. I absolutely did mention Max Blumenthal's absurd arrest yesterday. I saw somebody mention that in the comments, and I reached out to Max. For now, he's not doing an interview. At least he told me he wasn't doing an interview, but I did reach out to see if he was available, and I told him, let Status Quo know if you need anything, because obviously we are down with the gray zone and think it's absurd that Max was arrested and thrown into a jail cell and cages for 2 days without a phone call, without access to a lawyer, without anything. So that's that. Remember, folks, we got 334 people watching already. I need every single one of you right now to press that like button. Smash it. It's right under the video. The more people that press like under this video, it's the thumbs up button. The more people that press like, the more people that will see it. If you're watching on Periscope, share it on Periscope too. We got to get this out to as many people as possible. I hope, before I depart for the dirty, dirty South, I hope you will consider becoming a Status Quo member. Membership is how we grow. Membership is how we fund the reporting like we did this morning, other reporting that we're going to be doing. So statusquo.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 a month. Follow us at Status Quo on the Twitter. Like I said, we're live on Periscope right now. Subscribe to our podcast. That's Status Quo Podcast. Google it. And most importantly, join our email list. Go to statuscoup.com and enter your email. We need to grow our email list because we are really, really dealing with a lot of suppression on YouTube. People don't get notified. If they get notified, it's an hour after we're live. So joining our email list, not that we're going to email you every single day, but it helps us to get to you directly. We're also starting to talk about setting up a text alert system as well. So we'll have news on all of that. And before I get into CNN's erasing of Bernie Sanders, let me tell you something. Boy, would it really, really, really help me before I head to celebrate my brother's bachelor party. Really, really would put me in a better mood if we hit $81,000. What do you think, Jen? Can we hit $81,000? Is that possible? We got some great reporting to show you in the field coverage that no one else is doing today. We're less than $5,000 away from hitting the ultimate GoFundMe goal. It takes a village to raise children. It takes a village to meet this GoFundMe. Great analogy, I know. If you got $5, if you got $20, if you got $50, if you have $100, if you have more, drop it in the GoFundMe. We really, really appreciate it. 1,100 people have donated so far, and keep it coming in the GoFundMe. Now, CNN, props, 2. Oh, did I not put it in? Hold on. Do-do-do. What will be, will be. Hold on, farewell. There we go. CNN would like to make sure they want to put a blanket over Bernie Sanders' face to make sure you are not aware there is a surge. There is a surge, a Sanders surge. They put a few stents in him, and now there is a surge. And CNN is trying to cover that up as best as they can. Thank you for the graphic, Colin Tooley. The blanket over Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, a new poll came out today with Bernie Sanders in the lead in New Hampshire, 21%. Elizabeth Warren, 18%. Joe Biden, middle class Joe, union man Joe, Hobo Joe, as I like to call him, 15%. America's mayor, Mr. Pete Buttigieg, Wall Street's darling, Silicon Valley's hero, Mr. I've never done anything. I run a city that I've gentrified. He's at 10%. Decent showing for Tulsi Gabbard. I think that's one of her stronger polls in New Hampshire at 5%. Tom Steyer buying his way on the debate stage at 3%. Kamala Harris. What a fall from grace for Kamala Harris. 3%. Corey, 2. Beto, 2. I didn't even know Joe Sestak was running, 1%. And Julian Castro, who I expect to drop out next, 0%. This is New Hampshire, and this is a CNN poll. So, I don't know. Bernie Sanders leading this CNN poll by 3 points. Sure, in fairness, the margin of error is 4 points. So, technically, by the margin of error of this poll, it is a statistical tie. But I've been following, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, and our 500 viewers watching, please correct me if I'm wrong. And we got 520 people watching. 273 have pressed the like button. So we need 250 more people. Press that like button right under the video. The more people that press the thumbs up button, the more people that will see this video. Every single person. I don't care if you like me or not. Fake it. Press that like button. So, great graphic by Colin. And yes, I do send Colin these random graphics. Colin sent me a graphic before the live stream with a blanket completely covering Bernie's face. So I sent it back to him and said, can we move the blanket a little and cover half of his face? So maybe Colin, save your text messages for me. So maybe we'll release that for members, the text messages you get from me with these bizarre requests for graphics. That would be a good bonus for members. So why this is important is, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever Elizabeth Warren is leading Bernie Sanders, whether it be in a national poll, whether it be in a New Hampshire poll, Iowa poll, and it's within the margin of error, the headline still says Elizabeth Warren takes the lead. Elizabeth Warren tops Sanders. Elizabeth Warren surging if she's up by 2 or 3 points over Bernie Sanders. CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, they, even if it's by 1 or 2 points, they make very clear Elizabeth Warren in the lead. Elizabeth Warren has passed Bernie Sanders. CNN's treatment of Bernie Sanders now in the lead, a little bit different. A little bit different, I shall say. Sanders and Warren fight for home field in New Hampshire. Oh, they fight for home field in New Hampshire. I don't know. I only took one journalism class in college. Maybe that's why I think a little bit differently, because I wasn't indoctrinated with too many classes. But when I learned was the headline was the facts. And the facts are, in this CNN poll, Bernie Sanders is in the lead by 3 points over Elizabeth Warren, and he's in the lead by 6 points over Joe Biden, who at this point, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Restoring the soul of my lifeless campaign. That's his new slogan. It's moved from restoring the soul of America to restoring the soul of my lifeless campaign. So, CNN, it's a much different treatment. And I'm sorry I don't have the clip for you, but John King on CNN, you know, when they were talking about it, there was no word, there was no language that Bernie's in the lead. It was all, well, you know, they're basically tied, this and that. I have watched enough CNN segments so you don't have to. They do not talk this way when it's Elizabeth Warren in the lead. Even if it's within the statistical margin of error. Elizabeth Warren surging. It is a completely different narrative. And why is that, folks? Why is it that Bernie Sanders up by 3 points? Oh, he's not up. The headline is just, they're fighting. They got a tough fight in home field. You look at Ryan Grimm's Twitter from The Intercept. He showed several different headlines they've had and updates on this poll. Buttigieg in fourth, but a strong fourth. Oh, well, that's important. That's a big takeaway from the poll. This is a historically unprecedented New Hampshire mess. Nowhere. Bernie Sanders in the lead. Early state primary voters much more undecided than voters nationally. A disappointing poll for Biden. I can't find the part. Oh, wait, is this it? Sanders and Warren sit atop in New Hampshire, but there's no clear frontrunner. I just can't find the headline. It must be somewhere in the Wayback Machine, Jen. It must be somewhere in the Wayback Machine. I can't find the headline that says Bernie Sanders in the lead. Bernie. Do you know where the headline is, Bernie? Do you know? Do you know, Bernie? I can't find the headline with you in the lead, Bernie. So, of course, we know why this is. But I want to show you, because I think this part is critical to the poll. I'm going to show you a couple parts of the poll. But there's one part of the poll that I think is critical. And frankly, I don't want to, brush off my shoulder here. But Status Quo has been saying this all along. When these polling companies, CNN, Emerson, Quinnipiac, Monmouth, YouGov, when they actually poll a more equal distribution in terms of age, so when they poll a similar amount of people under the age of 50 versus a similar amount of people over the age of 50, shockingly, Bernie Sanders does a lot better. When you look at this poll, age 18 to 34, 330 people polled. That's 27% of the poll, of those they polled. 35 to 49, 282. That's 23% of those polled. 50 to 64, 30% of those polled were 50 to 64. And 65 and older, 20%. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I put it in my calculator. 27 plus 23, that's 50%. So The CNN University of New Hampshire poll polled 50% of those that they polled were 18 to 49. That is Bernie Sanders' strongest demographic. I'm not saying he doesn't have older supporters. A lot of them are watching right now. But by the numbers, by the data, Bernie does best under the age of 50. So in this poll, credit to the University of New Hampshire and CNN for once. 50% of those polled under the age of 50. 50% of those polled 50 or older. And what do you get? Bernie Sanders in the lead. It's shocking, right? If you actually poll a more even distribution, you get Bernie Sanders with stronger numbers. And we've been saying this for months. I'm not a polling truther. I'm not saying all the polls are BS, but a lot of these polls, particularly Monmouth, particularly YouGov and The Economist, particularly Quinnipiac, they wildly oversample older people and undersample young people. And then they give you as an excuse, and by the way, we got 700 people watching right now, 459 of you have pressed that like button. So I need another 300 of you. Press the thumbs up button right under the video. And as a reminder, folks, after this segment, we're going to be showing you some of our original reporting from this morning. I really hope if you got a couple bucks, you'll drop it in the GoFundMe. We are close. We are close. So close. And thank you. Jazit just left $5. Lawrence just left $10. We are now, what is that? $692 away from $81,000. If you got $5, if you got $20, $50, $100, whatever you got, it's helping us do this. We want to get out more. We're currently planning a trip to go to the Great Plains to report on the Keystone XL pipeline and the fight against the Keystone XL pipeline, unless you're waiting for CNN to do that. Getting back to Bernie. So another interesting part of this poll, second choice. You got Bernie Sanders voters, 43% of them say Warren is their second choice. Elizabeth Warren, 38% of her supporters say Bernie is their second choice. Biden, 27%, Warren, 15% of Biden supporters will vote for Bernie, if not Biden. Why this is important? I think Biden, I've been saying it for months, iceberg right ahead. This man's campaign is a slow moving Titanic. It's both a train wreck and a Titanic. I think possibly you might see him moving into 4th and 5th place in some of these polls. Frankly, he can't construct a complete sentence. Frankly, there's obviously something cognitively wrong here. I'm not wishing him poor health, but I have two eyes. He's not ready for prime time. He's aging before our eyes, and he can't construct a full sentence. And also, he has no vision. He's running Hillary Clinton's campaign with a different body part. It's all Trump is the Antichrist, Trump is corrupt, impeach Trump, Trump's with the Russians, and yeah, pass the caviar at my Wall Street fundraisers. He is not inspiring anyone to come out. So if Biden falls, according to this New Hampshire poll, if Biden falls, that support goes to Elizabeth Warren mostly, which would hurt Bernie Sanders. Which brings me to, and this might be controversial, but I'm just going to say it. A lot of people are not going to like what I'm about to say, but I keep it real, and I'm never going to sugarcoat it. To be clear, I am not today calling on Tulsi Gabbard to drop out of this race. I am not. But I am pointing out the majority of that 5%, if she ultimately leaves the race at some point, the majority of that 5%, my strong assumption, goes to Bernie Sanders. That could be key, that 5% in New Hampshire, to Bernie Sanders winning. I respect Congresswoman Gabbard. I don't agree with her on everything. There are some on YouTube that have their head so far up her behind, it's kind of embarrassing to watch. I do not. When she needs to be criticized, I will criticize her. When she should be praised, I will praise her. I don't like her moonwalking away from Medicare for all. I don't like that she recently just had off-the-record conversations with Wall Street people in New York City. I'm not gonna just be a fanboy for her and not criticize her ever. But the point is, currently she has not made the next debate currently. So these are the candidates that have made the next debate: Biden, Booker, Buttigieg, Harris, Bernie, Tom Steyer, Warren, Yang, Klobuchar. So obviously there's reasons she is polling low. Obviously there's reasons she is polling. Part of that is she's dealing with what Bernie dealt with in 2016, a media blackout. And when she gets coverage, it's to call her Assad's best friend, a Russian asset, this and that. So my point is, I'm not calling for her to drop out. I don't want to be confused with that. But I am saying, by the numbers, as Biden falls, Biden's support seems to go to Warren. So that's going to lift Warren, if Biden falls, above Bernie in this poll, unless Bernie gets support from elsewhere. And to me, that elsewhere most likely comes from that 5% of Tulsi Gabbard. So at some point, I'm totally for someone running, even if in their head they know it's not likely they're going to win, but they have an important message. They want to get that message out. But at some point, as progressives, we need to focus on winning, not, well, everybody has a right to be on the debate stage and this, that, and the other thing. Like, this is the truth. That 5% would be very valuable to Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire, and I believe she's polling at 2 to 3%. Win one at a time. Stop your fake news. Jordan, stop calling on Gabbard to drop out. It doesn't do any good. Did you not hear me 3 times say I'm not calling on Tulsi Gabbard to drop out? But I also am stating facts that at some point, if she is still polling between 3 and 5% in these early states, if she is not able to make the next debate stage or the debate stage after that, because if she doesn't make the next debate stage, it's a stretch that she would make. It's a stretch that she would make the debate stage after that, because the DNC keeps lifting the requirements. So I am saying, the bottom line is, if you're not going to win, you want to get your message out, I understand, but I am pointing out that Tulsi vote, if she's still in it, could be the difference between Bernie winning New Hampshire or losing New Hampshire. Possibly Bernie winning Iowa or losing. So I'm just stating facts. You don't have to like it, but what is more important to you as a progressive? Tulsi Gabbard and the democratic process of her being able to run, or Bernie Sanders winning? Because they've thrown enough candidates at Bernie Sanders to make sure, basically Warren right now is why Bernie is not winning. She is siphoning off votes from him. So that's the truth. So let's move on to another thing. Why it's so important. Why the age is so important. The fact that this poll is evenly split. 50% of those polled are under the age of 50. The other half were over the age of 50, an actual representation, is because even though the pollsters pretend they make excuses when outlets like Status Coup call them out for wildly undersampling younger people and oversampling older people, the youth vote is up from 2016 and 2018. This is from Vox. This is on the midterm elections. Young people drove turnout increases. Nearly 36% of age 18 to 29 years old citizens reported voting, a 16% jump from 2014 when only 20% of the youngest voters turned out to the polls. Adults ages 30 to 44 also increased voter turnout by 13%. So you have displayed in the midterms, that's 20% to 30, 16% increase in youth turnout. 18 to 29, Bernie Sanders' strongest demographic. So the days of pollsters being able to say, well, we're polling more older people because older people vote more. If young people voted more, we take the effort of calling more young people. You can't make that excuse anymore because I just showed you the data. The most recent election, 16 percentage point increase in age 18 to 29, youth turnout. By the way, it doesn't get covered in corporate media much. This is Bernie Sanders. This is his campaign's plan. This, I believe, from the New York Times. Despite a series of disappointing polls in the state, Iowa, a Suffolk University USA Today poll released this week showed him in fourth place. Allies are confident he is still in a position to do well. Like it did in 2016, the Sanders campaign is betting on an extensive ground game that relies heavily on a vast network of volunteers that they hope will motivate other supporters to turn out on caucus night, including people who do not typically participate in the political process. That's young people. Yeah, older people, there's a portion of older people who don't also, but a lot of young people do not vote. His aides believe that the technique known as distributed organizing will help motivate unlikely or first-time caucus goers, especially those who were too young to participate in the last presidential caucuses, Latino voters, whose voter turnout rate in the caucuses is typically low, and working class voters. The campaign sees high potential for victory, particularly in and around college towns like Ames and Iowa cities, and in rural areas. To solidify his base of support, Sanders has spent hours rallying on college campuses in an effort to capture the support of young voters. He has courted labor support, particularly in counties along the Mississippi River, and he has held multiple Unidos con Bernie events with Latino voters. This is talking about Iowa, not New Hampshire, but the point is the overwhelming majority of these polls wildly undersample younger people. You want to know why? Because younger people are not part of the pool that these polling companies call because they're not likely voters. And they have the polling companies generally keep calling people who they have polled before. So I think, just like there was a hidden Trump vote in 2016, a lot of people would not tell pollsters that they were supporting Donald Trump. I think there's a hidden Bernie vote in Iowa and New Hampshire because a lot of the young people are not called by these polling companies. Chris Mogul says, keep dreaming. I ain't dreaming. This is data. You don't have to like it, but what can you do? What can you do? And thank you, Joseph White. Another $10 in the GoFundMe. $80,318. Ugh, less than $5,000 to go to our ultimate goal. We got almost 900 people watching. I know there's more of you that want real, independent reporting. Keep going in the GoFundMe if you can. I'd really appreciate it. So, the last thing I'll say about this poll, and again, like I said, the corporate media, they wanna hide the fact that Bernie is leading the poll. They want to pretend that, well, it's within the margin of error, even though if the roles were reversed and Elizabeth Warren was up by 3 points, there'd be headlines, Warren surging over Sanders, Warren clearing the field, all these accolades for Warren. With Bernie, you can't find a headline that Bernie is actually leading the poll. What I think is most important, I think Bernie Sanders and his campaign need to continue their laser-like focus on college campuses, on millennials, on young people who are voting for the first time and getting them registered. I think they need to continue to focus in little pockets. So in Iowa, the Latino vote, you would be shocked. There is a decent chunk of Latinos who live in Iowa, predominantly a white state. New Hampshire, same thing. There are predominantly white state, but there are pockets of minorities. Bernie, at this point, he's not going to get the older Hillary Clinton voter to switch over. He's got to double down and triple down on young people because that is, I think, what could help him win. Also, I think Bernie Sanders needs to continue. I think Bernie Sanders is best. And his rise in the polls, because he is seeing an uptick in the polls, he needs to continue pummeling, not physically, Joe Biden. Laser-like focus on Joe Biden, because when people see the contrast when Bernie draws the contrast between him and Joe Biden, I've been saying this for days, Joe Biden sickeningly, Joe Biden has a strong level of support among people making $50,000 or less or with only high school degrees. That's Bernie's base. So if Bernie picks off those voters, if they leave Biden, are not going to Warren. They would be going to Bernie. The $50,000 or less, the only high school degrees, that's the working class, folks. So good news, I think, for Bernie in this poll. Obviously, he's not getting any favors from CNN, but we wouldn't expect anything else. Couple super chats. Wrote Simple Machines, $5. I'm voting for ranked choice in New York City, and now we have early voting. Yes, wrote Simple Machines, but don't get comfortable. Don't think because New York City did the right thing and moved their voting, the deadline to register as a Democrat to February and early voting. Don't think they will not try some shenanigans anyway. So stay vigilant. Artificial Morphicin, $5. I think Warren's poll numbers will drop as we get closer because voters will be researching her more. Your thoughts? I actually think voters will be researching her more because finally, after 4 to 5 months of slobbering, adoring coverage of Warren, finally there's been a couple critical articles of her. I mean, Warren has gotten Obama level 2007, 2008 slobbering coverage from the media. But I just talked about yesterday, New York Times did a story on her work as a corporate lawyer for Dow Chemical and other very, very questionable companies. Her work for a company that was trying to limit their liability to asbestos victims. I just saw another story today that I didn't have time to go through of her work for a corporate company and trying to limit liability for that company. So, again, this doesn't make her Lucifer, but it's definitely, Bernie Sanders wasn't representing corporations in trying to limit their financial liability to victims of, in one case, women who suffered from silicone breast implants. In another case, victims of a SV, I forget the other one. I talked about this yesterday. We put up the segment already today. But there's many examples of Elizabeth Warren as a corporate lawyer representing corporations against consumers, which doesn't really jive with her being the ultimate consumer advocate. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It doesn't jive. Oh, this is what I'm talking about. Let me quickly read this to you. This is from Mediaite. Senator Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign is defending her previous work for corporate clients like LTV Steel, but she slammed that company by name during a 1991 speech for screwing workers out of their pensions 4 years before she went to work for them on that very issue. The New York Times published a medium dive into Senator Warren's previous work for corporate clients. Warren's campaign tried to rip that Band-Aid off a few months ago by publishing disclosures about the legal work on her website, and aside from a brief focus on the money she was paid, little came of it. But the Times took a closer look that included her work for a company named LTV Steel. Here's how they summarized it, and this was basically her working for LTV Steel to limit their liability so they did not have to pay out, so that they could pay out less to coal miners who obviously breathed in all that disgusting coal and had a lot of health problems. Elizabeth Warren worked for the company to try and limit their liability so that they didn't have to pay coal miners health care. So, sorry, but to answer your question, Artificial Morphicin, yes, finally these stories are coming out. And let's hear it from Elizabeth Warren. Let's hear, is You're Not Record representing slimy, shady corporations who have made people sick and want to escape liability? Is that not relevant? Does that not kind of have a little bit of a conflict with you being a consumer advocate? And can we kind of talk about your evolution from representing these companies to like, I'm against corruption, I'm going to take it to the big corporations? Just saying. So, no, I think Elizabeth Warren, I said it at the time, when Elizabeth Warren's surge happened, I'd rather that surge happen when it did, months before the Iowa caucus, than right before Iowa or New Hampshire. Because there's only one place to go down once you reach the top. There's only one place to go once you reach the top, and that's down. So the fact that Bernie is steadily climbing up, there's only one place for Bernie to go, up. Only one place for Warren to go, down. Biden, there's only one place for him to go, to sleep. Just keeping it real. So, just got another super chat. Let me read that one. Charles Washington, have you seen Bernie's answers to the Council on Foreign Relations on foreign policy? I think how good his foreign policy has been understated. I did not, but I did see Bernie recently, yesterday was it, talk to J Street at the conference on Israel and Palestine and all that. I thought his answers were great on Israel and Palestine. He said, I'm proud to be Jewish. I would be the first Jewish president. Look forward to being the first Jewish president. And basically said, I think Israel has a right to exist, defend itself, but they need to stop basically treating Palestinians like roaches. And I believe in human rights. And we're not going to just automatically give Israel endless aid until they better serve the Palestinian people. I loved his answers. I loved his answers at J Street. So, before I get to my next topic, I want to remind you, we got 900 people watching. I want to remind you why today you should consider joining us as a Status Coup member. Let's take a look.
Brand new reaction coming in from Rudy Giuliani. And right now, President Trump's former top advisor on Russia.
More breaking news tonight on Rudy Giuliani.
Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani is under criminal investigation.
President Trump is not going to cooperate.
The latest on impeachment.
Impeachment investigation.
President Trump.
President Trump. President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump's
Educational issues with the children that have been poisoned. We're at one of the encampments that homeless people are living at.
It's really discouraging to notice these similarities where you have the administration going, there's absolutely nothing wrong with your water, but here, take these filters.
Are you on Social Security?
I am, but I work a full-time business.
I know, but you're aware Social Security is a socialist program.
Well, that's beside the point.
So remember, you can sign up as a Status Coup member for as low as a cup of joe a month. It makes a big difference, and we're about to show you some of the reporting we're doing thanks to your membership. We were out this morning, 8 a.m. in the morning East Coast time for a really big rally. There was between 100 and 200 people outside BlackRock, the massive financial institution that is the largest financial investor in fossil fuel projects. So you had the Sunrise Movement out this morning, you had other climate groups out this morning, and honestly, I was inspired. I'm a pretty cynical person, but there was really great energy, like 200 people before breakfast in New York City. Damn good, because I've covered a lot of protests where there's like 10 to 15, and you're like, oh, how am I going to make this, it's the more the merrier in terms of protests. So if you didn't see it this morning, I want to play one interview for you that really stood out to me. A 16-year-old with the Sunrise Movement. This was when the protest was clearing out. But this is the kind of reporting we could do more of as we grow our membership. Again, statuscoup.com/join. And we need to grow our resources. Thanks to the GoFundMe, we were able to purchase a new live view, which is why this morning's stream, it's the first time we've used it, was pretty flawless. Other than a few minutes of audio issues in the beginning, the stream quality was probably the best we've had. Before we got this product, it was really like we had a lot of buffering. The stream would pause or freeze, or we couldn't go live if there were too many people. With this live view we have now, that was not cheap. It cost us almost $10,000. We were able to get it because of you, because of this GoFundMe. You can't start a revolution if you don't have the technology. So thank you. Keep it coming to the GoFundMe if you can. I want to play this interview I did with Esther, and let's take a look. Again, this was outside a protest outside of BlackRock, who is the largest investor in fossil fuel companies and is also the largest investor in deforestation. Let's talk to some other folks here. You see all sorts of young people here. You want to talk? We have somebody from Sunrise Movement, which obviously has sparked a lot of this climate activism. I don't think the climate town hall on CNN, MSNBC would have happened without the Sunrise Movement. What's your name?
My name's Esther.
Esther. So 8 o'clock in the morning. What are you seeing? Are you seeing momentum? Because some people look at events like this as like, well, the people in the building don't give a damn. They just look at these folks as just riffraff to, let them chant and then they'll go away. How do you take events like this and actually create change?
Well, everyone here could be at work, could be at school.
but they know that this is much more important. Anything else that they could be doing, these people are making a sacrifice by being here. They could be at work, I could be at school, but we know that this is something that will help us for our future. We need to do this. It's not like we can't have business as usual anymore, and the timeline is really running out. So we have to show up now, and this momentum is more than you would have ever seen years ago. People don't normally just come on Tuesday, it's 9 a.m. People have other places to be, but they're choosing to be here.
Right. And I'm going to ask you, because the climate strike that just happened, it had like over 3 million people globally, hundreds of thousands in America.
7 million.
7 million, thank you. You know, what's interesting to me is that's a lot of young people, and they always say in America, well, young people don't vote, this and that. It seems like more and more young people are becoming, even if they're not like capital into politics that much, they're getting more active on climate. Is it encouraging you that a lot of the people your age are getting involved? Because really, it starts with the politicians that are taking money it starts with voting out those politicians that are taking the money from the BlackRocks and other companies like it.
Well, it's not necessarily that the young people are more politically inclined. It's more out of necessity. The effects of climate change are really going to affect my generation, because once we get to 2030, 2040, these years for us aren't so far in the future. So that's when I'm going to be in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and we'll have reached a point of no return. And once we get to 3 degrees, 4 degrees Celsius, you know, it's going to be like a snowball effect when the permafrost melts and the ice caps melt, like I think he was talking about before. You know, this is going to be something that my generation has to inherit. We're going to inherit these problems, and the reason why we're more active than we would have been in that previous generations have been is because the adults, the leadership right now aren't doing anything.
Obviously, we know the Republican Party can care less. Are you hearing enough from the Democrats? We have like 25,000 candidates. Obviously, Joe Biden kind of let's do a little trim around the edges. Warren has said some things. Bernie has the most expensive plan. What are you hearing from the Democrats? Is it enough?
Well, the other day, I think last week, a friend of mine was talking to Joe Biden from Sunrise, Lily, and he said,
Was that the one who called him child?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Look at my record, child. So there's certain candidates that aren't exactly taking us seriously, but, you know, we saw Sanders' plan, even Warren's plan, which she took mostly from Jay Inslee, who was, you know, a very dedicated to this crisis. But it's gonna take action at every level, and we do need a plan that's comprehensive. Obviously, we know which plans. You know, Sunrise hasn't officially hasn't shown support for a specific candidate, but you can see which candidates are taking this crisis seriously and which aren't. What we do need is a debate specifically on climate. The last debate, they didn't talk about climate at all, even though it's the #1 crisis. Even at a previous debate, CNN surveyed their viewers and they said, what issue should we talk about? And the #1 response was the climate crisis, of course. And they still only talked about it for like 10 minutes each night.
Gee, the DNC, who had a 5-minute ban on fossil fuel donations before they got rid of that ban, yeah, they don't want to debate on climate change. Shocking.
They had a town hall so that they can have like a free pass and say, well, we had a town hall, so we already asked all the questions, but of course, a town hall, not that many people watch them. It's got like 1/10 of the viewership because, you know, they're 7 hours long, and they're not on the stage at the same time. So you can't see, of course, they're all going to say, yeah, climate change, I'm taking it super seriously, but you need to have them all on stage at once so you can say which plan is actually the most bold, and they can challenge one another. So you need to have one candidate saying to another candidate, actually, your plan doesn't have this, your plan doesn't have this.
And lastly, Bernie, I'm not sure I've heard from anyone else, but Bernie has been talking about actually prosecuting these fossil fuel executives, which, let me tell you, Wall Street, these people, they don't like to hear that because they've gotten a free pass for many, many years. What do you think about, the Exxon Mobils of the world, the BlackRocks of the world, potentially facing criminal prosecution?
Well, ExxonMobil and some other companies, they knew about the climate crisis back in the 70s, and they pushed propaganda to say that, no, it doesn't exist, it's not a problem. But behind closed doors, they were saying, yeah, this is a big problem. We have to act now. That's what they were saying in the 70s. Behind closed doors, we have to act now. But then in the 90s, they said publicly, actually, you know, we have like 20 more years. They're lying, and there's the only way to actually show that this behavior is unacceptable is to put these people behind bars. Fining them, like, that's not going to do anything. They've made billions off of this crisis, and then to say you have to give us a small fraction of that back, it's still worth it for them in their eyes. Profits, if you're letting them, they have plenty. So just to say, we need to get a sliver of what you took by, investing in this crisis and funding this crisis and creating this crisis, just to say, actually, you have to help a little bit to fix it, that's not going to do anything. The only way to actually show that we do not tolerate this behavior is by prosecuting those people that caused this.
You mind if I ask how old are you?
I'm 16.
Why I wanted to ask how old she was? What's crazy to me, Esther at 16 has more intelligence in her brain than a combination of the idiots CNN puts on its network at a time. This is why it's so important to have independent media out, because you don't hear young people, very intelligent people speaking on this. They've done the research, whatever candidate you're for, they've done the research, and you usually have on these networks the few minutes, if they ever talk about climate change, lobbyists on, consultants on, people with conflicts of interest. So thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it. And Sunrise Movement, right? Cool. Thank you, Esther.
The youth will save us. The youth will save us. I thought she was just amazing. Just amazing. 16. I mean, honestly, she was more informed, more coherent, more passionate than the majority of the Democratic Party presidential candidates on that town hall stage. I mean, this is why when I say it is, obviously it's very, very important that we have young people getting involved in the political revolution. It's also very important that we have more independent media giving a microphone to these people, because people like her, if there's 2 to 3 people watching right now that are not as progressive, that don't know a lot, that have been indoctrinated by Fox News or other places, their mind might have been changed by something she said. That's the power of actual independent media that goes out and cover these stories. And by the way, there was no other media at this event this morning. Only other media I saw, I think there was a camera from Democracy Now! I think I saw Democracy Now!'s microphone. Amy Goodman wasn't there, but I think somebody from Democracy Now! Was there. But it's so important to have media that goes out and gives a microphone to these young people and old people, but people that are informed, that are passionate, because the only way that you're going to get what Bernie's talking about, it can't be done just by Bernie, galvanizing thousands and thousands, millions of working people, of young people. You got to wake more people up. Bernie's great, but he can't do that all alone, and that's where independent media comes in. So whether it's Status Quo you're supporting, other independent media, I could tell you, because I go to a lot of these places, it's pretty lonely. There's no other cameras. And if there are cameras, it's usually documentary people, not corporate outlets or anything like that. So that's why we're asking you. It's not cheap. Obviously, we got to pay for the equipment. Obviously, we got to pay for our staff. Keep it coming if you can. And thank you. We just got another GoFundMe donation. Bill, $20. So we are now $662. $662 away from $81,000. And boy, when I get on that plane tomorrow to Mexico for my brother's bachelor party, oh, man, I would really snooze and just listen to my third eye blind peacefully if we were at $81,000. Just saying. So I want to play another interview from that you haven't seen yet. This is from the Bernie rally from last week. If you're feeling in a biblical mood, this is with a reverend. The audio is, you could hear it, but we did have an audio issue. I want to play it for you anyway because I think it's a good interview. This was at the Bernie rally in New York City like a week and a half ago. So we have since then fixed the audio issue, but unfortunately this is when we didn't. But I want to play it for you anyway. I could hear it fine, so hopefully you can too. So this is with a reverend that I interviewed at the end of the Bernie Sanders rally in New York City. I thought other than him being like, oh, I like, Biden's not so bad, I thought this is another man that I would love to be quoted in the New York Times or the Washington Post or ever get on a panel on a cable news channel. He won't. But that's why Status Quo exists, to talk to people like this and expose more people to what real people, whether they're religious, whether they're not, working class people, what real people are feeling, what real people are going through. So here's an interview I did at the Bernie rally with the good Reverend.
This is winding down here.
That's not what I wanted.
They're chanting Black Rock.
Hold on. That is... Here we go. Bernie rally just wrapped. I'm down with Jesus. Reverend
John Henry Scott III, Esquire.
Let's see your sign here, because I think it's very interesting. I'm a descendant of white slave masters and American slaves, Native Americans, and I support Bernie Sanders. Oh, this is for 2016.
Well, this 2016 picture right here, when Bernie Sanders came to New Haven, Sanders slams inequality in speech on New Haven Green. That's a picture from back then. And back then I said in the article, I said that if I would support a Clinton-Bernie ticket and they would win. Okay, wait, it's in the article. All right, and I believe that had they done that, he'd be our vice president right now. And Hillary would be the president right now if they had done that, So, but we are, I'm a descendant of white slave masters, like most people of color, American slaves, and Native Americans. And I support Bernie Sanders. He's a tremendous human being. He cares about people. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. In fact, we're all one. There's one race, the human race, and America is for everybody. Everybody.
African Americans, particularly older women, African Americans, are the core constituency of the Democratic Party. Right now, a lot of them are for Biden. It's that traditional. They tend to vote more moderate, establishment, I think conservative. What's your message? It's not just to black people, but to older people who Bernie, they think, oh, it's not practical. Oh, he's too far left. This and that. What's your message to older people? Because that is the older people keep electing these establishment figures.
Well, the first thing is, I like Biden. I like them all. I like all our candidates, Democratic candidates, and some of the Republican ones also. The point is, one, you like your Medicaid, Medicare. Go back to May 20th, 1962, and look at John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy's speech at Madison Square Garden when he tried to get Medicaid, Medicare passed. You like your Social Security. That comes from what? FDR, okay? So what I'm saying is the programs that are loved today, back in the day, people said, oh, they're too liberal, they're too left to do this. Now, everybody loves it. Leave my Medicare alone, right? Even the Tea Party says, leave my Medicare alone, right? Same thing with Social Security. So therefore, what seems to be to the left today, tomorrow, as President Kennedy said, will be the natural order of the government, something like that. I don't have the quote exactly right.
And why do you think Bernie is the best equipped to defeat Donald Trump?
Well, what happened is that many white Americans thought that they were voting, African Americans too, because Donald Trump got, 8% of the African American vote? Okay? And he's on track right now for re-election. If Donald Trump wins, God bless him, he's our president. Okay, simple as that. All right? Because it's the American way, you vote. But people really thought that they were voting for Bernie Sanders, someone who would shake things up, and President Trump has done that. He's shaking things up. And also,
for the worse, yeah.
Well, what we need to do is this. We need to come together. Black, working class, white working class. We all came on different boats. We all came on different ships. We're all in the same boat now. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. If I'm poor and you're poor, we're all poor. Who cares about the color of our skin? Let's vote our economic well-being and don't allow people to divide you. We all need Medicaid and Medicare. We all need Medicare for all. What's that mean? The same thing that the senators, the United States senators have, and the Congress people have down there in Congress for their medical care, the American people get the same thing. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Jesus said, much is giving, much is required. Jesus said, and when I was sick, did you come and visit me? I was hungry. Did you feed me? I was thirsty. Give me something to drink. We were at prison. Come and visit me. You know. So, and he gave the parable. He talked about one, loving God with all your heart, mind, soul, spirit, and loving your neighbors as yourself. The person who is half and half, like President Obama, right? President Obama had a white mama, right? Not Hawaiian, a white mother from Kansas, and his white grandparents raised him, right? So he's half black, half white. But in America, one drop black blood makes you black, right? Go check out the laws; they're all there, okay? The law, they had to make distinctions about, okay? People are all mixed up. We're all mixed up. My point I'm making is the Samaritan was a hero, okay? And when the lawyer was asked the question, which one of these was neighborly? Jesus says. He said the one to show compassion. He didn't even say Samaritan. So let us love one another. Doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like. Let's be in community. Let us care for one another. And that's what Bernie is doing. So I am a Christian ordained minister, lawyer, minister, college professor, and I support my Jewish brother, Bernie Sanders, who will become the first Jewish president in the history of the United States of America.
I say l'chaim to that.
L'chaim that.
Thank you, sir. The good Reverend. He kind of lost me at, I like Biden and a little more Jesus talk that I'm generally comfortable with. I'm more of a Moses kind of guy. But I thought I liked a lot of the things he said. I really did. And there's one more Reverend that I'd like to show you. I did an interview with. For those of you that watched this morning, you might have already seen this, but a lot of people didn't see the live stream this morning. It was too early. They were on their way to work. So I spoke with another Reverend at the BlackRock protest in New York City, and boy, is this guy powerful. You've probably seen him before. He shows up to a lot of these things. Here's my conversation with the good Reverend at the climate protest in New York City.
This is winding down here. They're chanting BlackRock, get off it, put people over profits. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people up here that are, looks like risking arrest, where they're not going to move away from the front of BlackRock's building. By my count, it looks like there's between 100 and 200 people here before breakfast, which is pretty good. 100 to 200 people before breakfast. Not bad. Beautiful song, beautiful messages, and BlackRock, never mentioned in the corporate media, is the largest investor, financial investor in fossil fuel projects. Particularly, it is the largest investor in deforestation. We know what's going on in the Amazon. So I did see some comments in the live chat. What does this do? It's nice, but this doesn't do anything. I disagree, actually. Obviously, the people in that building don't give a damn about this particular protest outside. They just look at these people as riffraff, get rid of them. A few people will get arrested. But it matters because the more events like this, the more protests like this, the more awareness you raise and get more people involved. That's how change happens. You got to get more people aware and more people involved. So, very cool protest. It said on the page that I saw 80 people, but definitely between 100 and 200 showed up. This morning, you even have a young kid, looks like she's no older than 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7, that was chanting along with the adults. You had diversity of speakers, this and that, and this is New York City, so obviously you could have protests like this at any time of the day. Let's see if we could get an interview or two. Looks like, I feel like what we have here is a bunch of plutocrats hanging out by the pool as the house is on fire behind them. That's what's going on in the world. Could you kind of talk about what inspires you and the people out here to come out? This is not your first rodeo.
No, and it's 8 a.m., so those of us in the outer Bronx had to get up really early. I think this is about taking the defense of the earth to a more pragmatic social movement level.
No blood for oil, leave the profits in the soil. No blood for oil, leave the profits in the the soil. No blood for oil, leave the profits in the soil.
You always trespass. You always go into the space that is being claimed by the powerful. They call you trespassers. That always happens. You know, whether it's peace, women, labor, you know, civil rights, whatever that was. And the environmental movement has been conservative in that sense. Our process has been conservative. So I think that it's starting to dawn on us that we can shout out in the public squares until we're blue in the face. And they're up there, and they're allocating millions and millions of dollars to the destruction of life. We have to find a way to penetrate. Through the ceiling, through the roof, through the basement, through the sideways, through the Starbucks cappuccino machine, through in culture, in religion, in business, in government. We have to get to them. We have to find out how to do that. So they've had a free ride for a long time, and here we are in this Blade Runner future with just a few years to go before we can't turn around. This feels so good to be here today! It feels good. I think one reason it feels good to get up at 6:30 in the morning and find your way to the subway. Because we are the earth. Yes. We are the fire and the flood. Yes. We're not operating in a vacuum. We're not trying to be centrists anymore. The children, the 14-year-olds who are finding their love of the earth, they're not claiming to be centrists. They're not moderates. We must be as radical as Mother Earth is right now. Amen. The spies who are recording us, the executives up on the top floor, we will love them until they cannot hate us. And when I say us, I mean the earth. Yes. Right. We are the earth. We are the animals going extinct. We are the plants. We are the amphibians. We are the bacteria. We are agents, radical agents from the earth. And we are here. We hope the EPA turns around. We want the Sierra Club to win its lawsuits. Yes. But I can tell you that there's only one government that can stand up to this extra legal $7 trillion crime spree we're facing. What's that? And that is the earth herself. Yes. She is teaching us with her superstorms. She's giving us a message. We can't just say, oh, that's menacing. Oh, that's a kind of terrorism. Oh, that's God's major force. None of that works. She is us. We are her. We are the flood. We are the fire. If we're not called trespassers, if we're not called terrorists by the people who run the press up there, then we're doing something wrong. Every social movement that ever changed people in the United States took that risk. They were called those names, and they all had a faith. They were all risking their life and limb because they believed in something more than themselves, something deep in themselves. And we love the earth. She is our superior being. She is in us, and it will make it possible for us to do things we cannot imagine. We will penetrate the armor of this building. We will pass through its steel. The Trumpian walls keeping us out will fail. We will be the resurrecting estuary, the mountain, the alpine glaciers coming back to life. We will not be the silent spring. We will be the shouting spring. Amen. Amen. Earth, hallelujah.
And I think one of the things, the United Nations report that said we have 12 years until irreparable damage, that report was before the Amazon was on fire.
I know.
So, the timeline seems to be escalating even more and more.
Accelerating from the beginning. It's been accelerating from the most dire predictions by the Earth scientists, because we had no way of anticipating the way that different events in the Earth would empower other events in the Earth. What do they call that? The tie-ins. What do you call that? And so that more dark water takes in more sunlight, warms it up more, less ice makes more dark water. That whole cycle is going on everywhere. It's all speeding up. And the last time carbon dioxide climbed at this rate, 95% of life disappeared. So at what point do we say that's an emergency? I'm in trouble.
And you spoke about centrism's not going to get it done anymore. No. We know some of the Democratic Party's leaders talk about a middle ground. Obviously, Bernie Sanders has a $16 trillion plan. Some other candidates have less so. What's it going to take? Because obviously BlackRock's got CNBC on its side. Obviously, the corporate media is owned by multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates. And you have a Democratic Party that takes a lot of money from these institutions, too.
I think it's the wrong question, what's it going to take? Because we didn't know that the Earth would start accelerating at this rate. So we could never have asked that question and answered it accurately before. What makes us think we can now? What makes us think we can now is the Industrial Revolution, is enlightenment, is our privilege, is our colonizing, is the habits we have of consumerism, of being able to estimate everything with data and so forth. Those days are over. We're out in magic land here, white man. Amen. It's another day. And so every day we've got to review, every hour we've got to review, and we've got to escalate ourselves.
And my viewers want to know, where do they get the orange jumpsuit?
Well, when I go into a thrift store, my eye goes down the suits, and people throw this beautiful stuff away sometimes. So,
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So to me, the takeaway from that interview was definitely the orange suit. I'm just going to say that is pretty dapper, and I would like it. No, I'm kidding. Reverend Billy Talon, he has been in the forefront of climate protests, greed against Wall Street. I think he was jailed a couple times. I recall hearing about something with him and J.P. Morgan in New York City. So always a great asset to have at these protests. And from what I know, he just lives in the Bronx, not one of these huckster Joel Osteen types defrauding people. So great to speak with him. We'll have some other interviews that we did there, posting it on the channel. Again, I'll be out for the rest of the week after tonight, going to my brother's bachelor party, but we will have videos to post while I'm gone, and God willing, I'll be back Monday from my brother's bachelor party. So, with that, I ask you humbly to consider something for a second. While I'm gone. And I know, I've asked a lot of you already. Bernie Sanders talked about at the last rally, Are you willing? Let's get Bernie out for a second. Are you willing to fight for somebody that you don't know as hard as you would fight for yourself? Are you willing? I think sometimes we ask you to become a member or ask you to pitch into the GoFundMe, really focusing mostly on the dollars and cents. And of course, it is a dollars and cents game. We need money to travel. We need money to afford to hire new people eventually. We'd like to hire new reporters.
more help in marketing, advertising, social media, everything. But I think when we talk about GoFundMe, when we talk about join us as a member, statuscoup.com/join, I don't always focus on why it's important outside of the money. The reason I think it's important, whether you choose to support Status Coup and join us as a member, statuscoup.com/join, for as low as $5 a month. Again, statuscoup.com/join. Trying to get to 1,000 members by the end of this year. Got some work to do. The reason I think it's really important, whether you're supporting us or another outlet, is because there is a major information war, not only in this country, but going on globally. And the war is being waged against you by, frankly, criminal capitalists. Capitalism, if it was ever a good thing, has been hijacked. And it is now the capitalists, and I think BlackRock is a perfect symbol of this. The capitalist order, the capitalist army, from BlackRock to Goldman Sachs to all of these firms heavily invested in oil projects destroying the planet, heavily invested in big pharma killing many of the people you know with these drugs, heavily invested in net neutrality, telecom companies pushing net neutrality, heavily invested in gentrification and economic development, pushing poor people out, heavily invested essentially in pushing poor people out, profiting over planetary constraints. They have a massive army of public relations people on their side to spin their greed, their crimes as economic development or sustainability, talking about climate in terms of climate change. They have a massive amount of PR people. They have a massive amount of marketing people, advertising people, branding people. They have an army to fight that information war for them, to keep the masses asleep and dumb. They also, when talking about BlackRock, when talking about Goldman Sachs, when talking about all of these outlets, they have the entire corporate media as essentially their protectors. From CNBC to the New York Times to the Washington Post, they all fetishize and glorify these corporations destroying not only our planet, but our neighborhoods, making it so that they rake in unprecedented profit while you work 3 jobs, or you struggle to put your kid through college if you can at all. So there's a massive information war going on. The only way you even have the chance to fight back against that, I'm not talking about physically, I'm just talking about to get what's actually happening out there. To make sure, I saw today, 8 a.m. in the morning, we were live. I saw people in Washington State watching. I saw somebody from China watching in the live stream. The only way to wake more people up is if you're able to show up and cover it. If you're able to show up and fund the microphone, to fund the cameras, to fund the people, to fund Jen, to fund Joseph, to fund me, Marcus, Colin. The only way, and it's going to take a lot more than Status Coup, by the way. I wish there were many, many other Status Coups. I mean, Democracy Now! Does decent work. The Intercept, the Gray Zone. But we need to start pressing back aggressively against the capitalists who have seized the information airwaves. They've seized the print media. They've seized digital media. They've seized television. And their goal is to keep the masses asleep and uninformed. Because if the masses get woken up, if the masses start to see, wait a minute, I didn't know that this company is invested in burning down the Amazon. I didn't know this company is invested in jailing unprecedented number of black people. I didn't know that Amazon is the reason so many people are homeless in San Francisco and Seattle. I didn't know that. The only way actual change happens, and I'm not running for office, so this isn't a stump speech. This is what I truly believe. The only way that actual change happens, two ways. Political change, but politicians are not the only source of waking people up. A long, long time ago, when media and news was actually for the public good, there was decent journalists out there exposing Iran-Contra, exposing Watergate before those two became the hacks they are today, exposing the crime that was the Vietnam War. Hunter S. Thompson going around the country through his, really, really, whatever you want to call that, gonzo journalism. He exposed the true face of basically the American dream being just that, just a dream. So whether it's funding us or somebody else that you think does it better, as best as you can, because obviously I know most of our audience is living, paycheck to paycheck. Drop in a couple bucks to our GoFundMe. More importantly than GoFundMe, if you said to me, Jordan, which do you rather I do, support you on GoFundMe or become a monthly member? 100%. Sign up today as a monthly member. Even if you don't know if you could stay a member, just sign up today. See what you could do. All you got to do, it's for as low as $5 a month, you could become a Status Quo member. You get bonus content. You join us for a monthly members call with Jen, myself, Joseph. It's on video, so you see me, I see you. Membership is how we're going to grow. Because I'm telling you right now, folks, this is not to pat myself on the shoulder. This is not because I have a grandiose view of myself. I'm just telling you the facts. I've been doing this now in the field for 4 years. 90% of the events I go to cover, I'm the only national media there. And Jen could tell you this too, because when Jen's been out in the field, she sees the same thing. So if we're not there, who's going to be there? And if we could change one person's mind watching today, if we could change two persons' mind watching, or even just make them think, that builds up over time. YouTube is doing its best to suppress us, but we're going to work around that. We're having conversations in the background. How do we work around this suppression? And that includes going on other platforms other than YouTube. We just got to figure out which ones. So that's my spiel for today. I hope while I'm gone, you'll consider pitching in. And thank you, Kelly Elaine, dropping the hammer, $200. Kelly has donated probably more than any other person of the 1,100 people that has donated. My guess is you probably donated at this point 50 to 60 times. Not everyone could do what Kelly has been doing, and I thank you, Kelly. But if you got $5, if you got $20, Bernie said, would you fight for someone you don't know just as hard as you? I'm saying, will you fight so Status Quo can fight on your behalf this information war? Because how capitalism wins, how fascism wins, how the status quo wins is if the majority of people do not know the massive corruption, injustice, and basically economic Hunger Games that's going on all around them. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Joseph will be live tomorrow. Bear with him if there's any issues. It's his first time going live. So he'll be live around 5 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be posting other videos. Jen, Joseph, whatever. If there's breaking news, I'm sure one of them will go live or post a video. And thank you as always. I'm going to take a few days off to celebrate my brother's final days of being a bachelor, and I will be back at it next week. Remember, sign up, statusquo.com, join our email list if you haven't, very quickly, statusquo.com, enter your email. That's another way we grow, and I really hope you will sign on the bottom line as a member after this stream. I will talk to you when I'm back. Peace out.